Hi, Nikki. Welcome to Time Free.
Hi, thanks for having me, Michelle. So great to be here.
Thank you. So, as you know, Time Free is a podcast where we're sharing our experiences as moms and professionals. I would love to ask you some questions. So,
Yeah, sounds great.
if you're happy to share, do you want to talk us through who you were and what were you doing professionally before you had kids?
Yeah, so before I had kids, honestly, I'm going to take you back just a little bit because I think I always knew that I wanted to do something meaningful that made a difference. And life kind of happens as it does, and it takes you in a different direction. So I
Yeah.
fell into a job in cybersecurity after my life sort of pivoted. And I thought, like I can really grow here. And it was fun and exciting when I was young. And so I was always super, super ambitious. And what I wanted more than anything was to achieve, to make my parents proud, to be able to, take care of my family, support myself, be independent, boss babe type stuff. And so I was like, wow, I'm actually really good at this. And so I climbed that corporate ladder and I grew really quickly in that corporate space because I was willing to grind it out and do all the things. And it was great for that time period. But motherhood obviously changes you. And so after I became a mom, I really felt like my priorities shifted, but also sort of like lost my sense of self in that because I started to, try and sit with these questions of like, who am I if not that person now? Because I think the biggest
Mm,
challenge was trying to hold it all and do it all and be both, right? To be the best, the achiever, like the boss lady that I was in this corporate life, but
yeah.
also now I have all these other responsibilities and how do I hold both to that level? And that's where my challenges really started to happen and where I started to grapple with these questions about my new identity
Yeah.
and what that meant.
Yeah, absolutely. I think an identity shift is absolutely what I think every mom experiences because you have to understand who you are within this new role, right? And it's so
Hmm.
difficult because um becoming a mom, even though you really wanted to, you're going to have to shift your priorities, where you spend your time, how you think about things, and so that naturally makes you question who you are.
Yeah.
Um, and how do you want to take us into that, into how your identity shifted, how you felt, and what that period was like for you?
Yeah. I mean, of course, people tell you, like, oh, your life is just going to change overnight. And you know that on some logical level, but experiencing that is like this whole new thing. Right? So for me, I felt like when I first became a mom, it was like at the peak of like that motherhood through Instagram phase. And of course,
Mm,
on mat leave, when I'm all of a sudden not like achieving the same way as I was in the corporate world, and I have all this extra time and I'm really not like sure what to do with myself, I'm like, oh, this is the standard that I need to uphold in this new chapter, right? So I
yeah,
became very sucked into the perfectionism of like creating the magic and motherhood. And so feeling like I needed to be that in order to be good enough as a mom. Um,
yeah,
and then when I went back to work, feeling like I needed to be that and also still be everything that I was before kids, right? And so that's how my identity really started to like shift because I also didn't, it's not that I didn't feel the drive because I still felt that same drive, but now I just felt pulled in two different directions. So I felt like my life was living in
mm,
this constant tension between like, which thing do I prioritize? Where do I,
yeah,
and inevitably, when you're trying to hold it all and do it all, you drop the ball. You fall short, right? And so, what I
yeah,
was making that mean of myself during that period, because I felt like I was constantly behind the eight ball, I was constantly failing, like never measuring up in either category because I had such high expectations of myself
yeah.
and not enough grace for myself during that period and that transition.
Yeah. And I think one of the feelings is, if you go back to at least the same role or the same type of work, you feel like, why can't I perform in the way that I was performing.
Right.
But in reality, you're sleep deprived most likely. Your
Yeah.
priorities have shifted. You're thinking about so many other things.
Right.
How to raise a child, how to be present with your child, um, in addition to trying to do the job. Whereas
Mhm.
seriously, that was probably your main priority, right?
Right.
Did
Right.
you have the same job? Did you have the same job and then fall pregnant, have your child, and then go back to the same job, or how
Right.
did
So
that
I
work?
actually I went back into an even bigger job because I had sort of laid
Okay.
the groundwork before going on mat leave for like a management level operations and inside sales management position. So
Hmm.
I was going back into a bigger role with bigger responsibility, which was exciting for me. I actually went back to work
Yeah.
early off mat leave because I felt
Okay.
like I was so scared to be away for so long to lose that opportunity. They had the role come up that they needed to fill and I didn't want to miss my chance. It was like one of those situations where I was like, okay, I'll just come back early. Like, don't worry. And honestly, truth be told, at that time in my life, I wanted to go back to work early as well because I felt like I knew what I was doing at work, but I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing at home as a parent. And that discomfort in me brought up a lot of stuff. Like I was like, I don't know how to navigate this. Like, of course, I was dreaming of becoming a mom. I wanted this so bad, but like the reality of this does not match my expectation. The things that I hear other people say don't match what I feel internally. So I have a lot of shame around that. And so I really threw myself into work because I was like, oh, well, this is somewhere I know I can still succeed. This is somewhere I know I can still achieve, you know? This is
Yeah.
where my identity is. And what if, like, I can't lose that? So it was like this sort of way of, I think, trying to save myself where I felt like I was losing myself at that time, but it really just pushed me
Mm,
further into like this struggle of trying to balance the two identities. And honestly, it
yeah.
created um, a lot of dysregulation in me because the truth is also when I became a mom, I think there was a
Yeah.
lot of ways that I had been conditioned throughout my life or that I was like masking certain things. But when I became a mom, this added responsibility, all of a sudden it became like too much to hold.
Yeah.
I couldn't mask in the same way. I couldn't like push through. And so everything sort of started to like come apart beneath the surface. And I couldn't stay regulated. I was just stressed out all the time and I wasn't sleeping well and I wasn't being the mother that I thought I
Mm,
was going to be because I was so reactive, because I was so stressed, because I was always thinking about work. I wasn't being present enough. Um, and there was just so
yeah.
much guilt and shame associated with all of that. So I think that's where things really started to unravel for me. Um,
Yeah.
and then I had this sort of rock bottom moment where I realized that I really, something had to change because I couldn't continue on like that. Um, I sort of
Yeah.
looked at myself in the mirror one day. I was like, I don't even like who is this person? Like, I don't even
Yeah.
know who I am anymore. And that sounds so
Yeah.
cliche, but I mean, it's true because I felt like I was sort of in between these two worlds now, and I didn't know where I fit anymore. And I wasn't the person I was, but I wasn't the person that I wanted to be either. And I didn't know who I was now, you know?
Absolutely. I speak to so many moms, and everyone describes it slightly differently and has a different way to articulate what they felt. But in essence, it's pretty much the same feeling. And the way I described it is that I felt that I was almost like fragmented, that there were all
Hmm.
these pieces of me, and I was still
Yeah.
those pieces. I
Yeah.
was still those pieces, but I couldn't. The whole didn't make sense anymore, and I didn't know how to put it back together. And I had a massive burnout and a massive breakdown
Hmm.
as well. And I think it's just that we're kind of conditioned to just carry on doing what we've done and surviving and just going
Right.
on. I don't think we were ever anyway as kids or even as adults taught that you can take a step back and sit down and assess and try to,
Hmm.
find your path again. And I think the what you said with feeling dysregulated, I think that that's so common, and so many
Hmm.
women maybe don't have the language to articulate that, but that's what they're going through. And then,
Yeah.
like you say, it feels like you're dropping the balls in you're never good enough in any avenue, right? You don't feel
Right.
good in being a mom or being a professional, and it feels like it's like you're trying to handle too many things, and actually nothing feels like it's working. And I think it was so
Right.
insightful what you said about wanting to go back to work, because that's kind of where you felt like you had the control and you knew what you
Hmm.
were doing. I think that that's
Yeah.
so it's so interesting, because it is being a parent is a tough gig. It's the most magical thing that's ever happened to us.
Yes.
But I think
Absolutely.
it's also it's that, yeah, constant troubleshooting, and every
Right.
second is different, and you don't know if what you're doing is the right thing. Like it's high stakes every day.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the
And then
constant,
what
like the pressure, the low hum of like the demands that are always kind of
mm,
running, and it's like that mental load, right? And then it's like overwhelm. Um, and like I said, the pressure of the high expectations. And those are the things that kind of, from sitting in that state for so long, this low level like stress, and
yeah,
pressure, it actually is what creates that like sort of fight or flight, that reactivity, because it's basically like the body's just gets overwhelmed from trying to handle it. Like
yeah,
our window of tolerance shrinks. But I do think that one of the more difficult things in that process is just, um, I think deciding where we need to let things go. And I think that was really hard for me as a perfectionist. A lot of us and around our age gap kind of grew up in these environments where we were told that we could like be and do anything. And we didn't really stop to think like, oh, well, I can be or do anything, but that doesn't mean I have to be and do everything. Right.
yeah.
And so being able to decide where we can like let things go, um, in order to feel like we're not failing and to kind of release that pressure valve is really helpful.
That is that is a really good way of putting it. I mean, when you spoke about it, I kind of thought of the Spice Girls. Each Spice Girl had a different like strength, and they all
Yeah.
told us we could be all these things, but we can't. We can't be all of the Spice Girls at once. Like
Yeah.
we can't be all of the things at once.
Yeah.
Um, we need to give ourselves space to also kind of, you know, have the yin and yang. We
Hmm.
have to be have the good times, but also give ourselves the rest and the break that we need so that we can
Yeah.
find that balance.
Hmm.
What changed practically in the way that you work? So you said that you had this kind of this moment realizing it can't go on this way.
Right.
What changed? What did you do? What were your decisions?
Right. So I think what changed for me first and foremost was a realization that, like I said, I just wasn't the mom that I thought I was going to be or that I wanted to be. And I started to ask myself questions. Well, why is that? Why am I not the mom I want to be? Like, what is wrong with me? And at first, there was like a lot of shame with that. And then, truthfully, I just started reading self help books because I was looking for like the solution. I need to be fixed. I am a broken human being. There is something
Yeah,
wrong with me. I need to fix myself, right? Um, and I thought it was just going to be this easy thing. But truthfully, that process sort of led me on this self discovery journey that I was like, well, okay, if I'm not happy, then why am I not happy?
yeah,
And I couldn't figure out what I wanted because often people are like, well, then what do you want instead? Well, I was like, I don't know. The truth is, I knew what I wanted, but I didn't feel like it was possible or I was safe to ask for those things. And so I couldn't admit to myself what I actually wanted. All I knew was what I didn't want. Like, I don't want these things, and I want these things, and I want these things.
yeah,
So then on the flip side of that, it's like, well, how can I start to flip that around and look at what's on the other side of that. If I don't want this, then what do I want instead? And if this all exists on a spectrum, then can I take one step closer to that? Right? Um, Not
Yeah.
necessarily believing, well, then I can have this instead, because that was like too big of a stretch for my brain to believe. But believing in the possibility that I could get like incrementally better, you know what I mean? Um, and that one of those things was like starting to carve out time for myself because I realized that I was too busy doing everything for everyone else and not doing enough for me. Um,
Yeah.
and I know it's so cliche, and everyone's like, "Oh, well, moms, make time for yourself." And we're always like, "Yeah, well, if I could, I would." Like these are all the things I have to hold. But it started with just small things. Really, what I call like micro moments of like nourishment. Like, can I just take 5 minutes to go walk outside and get sun on my face with a cup of
Mhm.
ice cold beverage or something? Um, or can I, take a few minutes to read or whatever it is that like filled
Yeah.
my cup at that time? I was like, can I make one small shift in my diet to start like eating a little bit healthier and like taking care of myself in that way? Can I carve out 10 minutes to do exercise instead of an hour? Right. So, like these small little shifts that I was like, can I
Mm.
do if I don't have time for this 1 hour where I feel like I can dedicate to myself? Can I give myself 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 10 minutes there, and will they add up to something? Right. So those were the shifts
Mm.
that I really started to make because it felt manageable. It didn't feel
Yeah.
overwhelming, right? And through that process, and like I said, more the inner work of like discovering what is it that actually makes me happy? What is it that I actually want?
Yeah.
Starting to experiment with those things. I think that was a really big thing, like just permission to experiment, to not need to get it right the first time or to know, but just
Yeah.
to try different things um, until I'm like, oh, this feels good, or this is nice, or this is working, and then keep doing that, and then adding something else. And it was
Yeah.
sort of like a snowball rolling down a hill. It wasn't like this big overnight shift or this one thing that changed.
Yeah.
It was like a bunch of little things that compounded.
And were you still in your old career at the time? Did you kind of retain that for a while?
Yes, yeah.
And how did you navigate that? How long was it time-wise that you took off on maternity leave? And then, how did you juggle that? How did you juggle the childcare requirements and going back to work? Can you talk us through like the practicalities of that?
Yeah, so I took off 8 months for maternity leave the first time. And when I went back to work, I had to have daycare. And so that was a really big
Mm.
challenge for me. Um,
Mm.
because I mean the cost of daycare was so crazy, but it worked, right? I had a good paying job,
Mm.
so I was like, this is fine. And that's how it worked for a while. In terms of like practicality of how that meant managing things at home, um, I started to try and look at like areas of my life where I could get extra support. Now, I know this isn't
Mm.
possible for everyone, but I was like, can I, get a deep cleaning of my house once every couple weeks or whatever? Like, can the things that I don't really have time to do, like, can I add
Yeah.
in like, um, you know, a food delivery service or whatever? Like, I think I did HelloFresh a lot during those like times, or like HelloFresh or whatever the different kinds. There's like a chef's plate. There's
Yeah.
different ones, whatever.
Yeah.
So I did like meal delivery service type stuff during that time because I was trying to take like one thing off my plate that I didn't have to think about. So
Yeah.
practically while I was still working, that really helped. And then trying to like offload certain items. At the time, I don't think my husband and I really had that arrangement. I was still trying to like hold everything together at first. It was like I said, it was more of a snowball of
Mhm.
like one thing at a time. And me
Yeah.
developing the confidence and courage in myself to be like, okay, like these are the things that you need to hold, or these are the things that I need off my plate, and starting to have those more productive
Yeah.
conversations. But it had to build to that place, right? Because you didn't start off there. So when my daughter
No.
first went back to work, that's kind of how things started. And then I think it was probably like another 2 years before um, I really left that. Well, actually, it was a little bit more than that before I started to leave that job and prepare like for a career that would allow me to go away from the office and build my own business. So then that sort of became something that through my personal development work led me on that journey to the
Yeah.
coaching side of things, where I started to, because I had made so many changes in my life and I started to be able to help other people. COVID hit, and that was a really big factor that sort of pushed everything over the edge because I was like, I have all these tools. A lot of people are really struggling. They need help. I did a lot of
Mm.
coaching for free to build my business at that point in time. And that allowed me later to have that freedom to make different choices with my career. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's fantastic. I mean, it feels like it's an almost like a reinvention.
yeah,
You know what you don't want, and I think that's the struggle that people have, is that they know that what they don't want, but they don't necessarily know where they need to go or what they need to
hmm,
do or how they need to start. And I like the way that you're describing almost sort of these tiny consistent changes. And I feel like or at least I'm the kind of person who kind of blows things up and then does something completely different. And
yeah.
I don't think that that's necessarily the way that you should approach things.
I mean, that
I
works for
like this.
some people. It does.
Yeah,
So
I
don't,
mean,
like, we
it's
want to
just.
normalize that too, right?
I remember kind of at 29, I left this really, prestigious law firm and went to walk the Camino across Portugal and Spain. And my uncle said to me, like, "You're an idiot. Why would you do this? All of your peers are, just would love to be at this firm that you're at, and you're just literally blowing everything up." And then at 39, we left the UK and we just moved to Spain and left everything
Right.
we knew and all our safety. And I feel like for me, I really do like the challenge of like a completely new start. And I don't have a lot of patience to stay somewhere where I don't want to be. I think that
Hmm.
that's a special. You really do need to build that muscle to be able to kind of be comfortable, find comfort within that space that's like really really tough for you. And um but I really like the way that you've described this kind of snowball effect, these tiny consistent changes, because I do
Hmm.
feel like trying to make those massive changes all at once can sometimes be destructive, because you're also especially as a mom, you've got a lot on your plate. And
Yeah.
so it's not only disruptive to you, it's also to your children, to your partner. I mean, I remember my partner just saying, like, I just want a few months of just like peace, please.
Yeah.
And that's so understandable,
Yeah.
but but I also feel like, there's different ways of doing things. And I really like the kind of way that you've structured it to say, as I'm learning, I'm putting in place these little changes, because I think that is also, it's less stressful for yourself and everybody around you, but it gives you those incremental wins, right? Those
Yeah.
little things that are saying, I'm kind of on the right path. And you get a bit of feedback, and I think when the blow up approach doesn't really give you that feedback. So you don't quite know where you are, and when you're already in a tough place, I think it can be a bit mentally exhausting and difficult.
Right. I
That
mean, I
was
think
that was really that. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think different approaches can work at different time periods as well, and at different places in
Mm,
our life and for different situations, right? So I mean, I absolutely also love the blow up approach, in times, but I think really at that point in my life, I realized that I couldn't just blow everything up. Like I had responsibilities or whatever in my life
yeah.
that like I just had to kind of try and navigate a little bit more delicately. But also, what one of the biggest things for me at that time was a sense of overwhelm from all the things that was happening. So I was like, I can't possibly just like, blow everything up and then make a bigger mess because I don't know that I'm in a place where I can handle that, right? So I felt
Yeah.
like the most practical approach for me at that time was just incremental things, right?
Yeah.
And Yeah. So I think I do think that the blow up approach can work, or the fresh start approach. And I love that you said, um, when I know that something's not right for me or I'm not happy, like I just have to leave. And I think that's really
Mm.
important because when there's a moment that we know something that we can't unknow, where we've like made that decision, it becomes much easier to make that change, right? There's
Yeah,
like sort of like this clarity, and it becomes easier to move forward. But when you don't have that clarity, when you're still trying to navigate, it's a lot harder to like blow things up. 'Cause you're like, well, for what? What am I doing? Right? Like, so you need
exactly.
that clarity of the
Yeah.
direction that you're going, for that to really be more practical for it to work for you, um,
Yeah.
as opposed to, yeah. So just different approaches for
Yeah.
different moments.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you mentioned that you eventually quit the job in
Yeah.
corporate world and you've gone into coaching. What
Hmm.
helped you to sort of to know that that's what you wanted to be doing going forward? What helped you to navigate that transition? Because obviously that's something where you're giving up maybe a lot of safety and comfort for something that's more unknown. So you mentioned that you were kind
Right.
of coaching people for free. Can you give us some insight into that?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing that helped me know is I had always been so interested in helping other people, and I was sort of like that sounding board, like the confidant, the friend. I was always in that position in my life everywhere I looked. Um, so I had read this article about life coaching. I was like, "What is this?" It was like many, many years ago. Like, "What is this? This is so fascinating. Like, people actually can get paid for this? Like, I didn't even know that. I play this role already in my life." So that was something that helped me, like, I guess, have a mirror for like what was possible and like the skills that I already had that I wasn't using practically. And I
Yeah,
became really interested in that because I actually had wanted to be like a psychologist or psychotherapist before. Um, but I just didn't go down that path because I was trying to please other people in my life at that time, and they
yeah,
just didn't think that that was a good path for me. So um, I kind of went a different way with my career path. So it was sort of like a recognition of like, oh, this is almost like a full circle moment, like coming back to what I actually already knew that I wanted to do, but I didn't trust because I was trying to, follow the path that other people were pushing me down. Um,
yeah,
and so I just took at first like a really basic, like, I don't know, like a Udemy starter course to see like, am I interested in this content and this material? And when I was really interested in it, when I was like, oh yeah, this is absolutely for me, then I invested in a course. And through that course, you have to get a certain amount of coaching hours for free, like experience. And the first time I really, really knew, like without a shadow of a doubt, I had my very first client, and I coached her on a call. She was in London. She was based in London at the time. London, England. It was so crazy. I was like, wow. But anyway, so I had my very first client and I was coaching her on something, and she had this really massive breakthrough. And I remember when I got off the call and I just cried like a baby because I was like, "Oh my God, like this is what it feels like to like be in my like purpose." Like I just felt like it was like angels singing. Like it was like that moment for me where it sounds so cheesy, but like it was literally the thing. I was like, "This is what I'm meant to do." Like there was no doubt in my mind at that point, and I knew I had to take it as far as I could. So, yeah.
yeah.
So I started
Amazing. So
coaching
you base
for free during COVID because, like I said, I was trying to get my hours up, but I mostly just saw this need to fill, and I loved the work so much,
mm,
that I was like, this is something I would do for free. And so I'm
yeah,
gonna keep doing it until it turns into something that can actually pay me, right?
yeah. And so do you feel that you make at least what you used to make financially, money wise on on your coaching that you did in your corporate job or not
Mhm.
quite yet?
No, so here's the thing. I actually feel like I'm still not making like in my life what I was making in my corporate job. I wanted to leave for a long time. I was like, I'm not going to leave this corporate job until I can fully replace that. But I realized that, like, that security, I came to a point in my life where I was like, what do I value more, that sense of security or, like, the things that I think I should have, or what my heart and my truth is really telling me about where I should go and what that gives me in terms of time freedom and all the other flexibility that I definitely don't have. And that was a really
Yeah.
big deciding factor for me. It was about the lifestyle. It was about what I'm creating. It was about what my heart wanted. It was about my truth and, like, what I felt mattered to me more. I used to really be driven and ambitious because I thought I needed to achieve a certain level of success in order to, like, be successful or appear a certain way to people or prove that I made or whatever. And I think that through this work, my mindset really shifted to realize that, like, oh, I don't actually want those things. I wanted those things because I thought that's what I needed to be happy, or I thought that's what I needed other people to see in order for me to, like, be
Yeah.
good enough.
Yeah.
But none of
Yeah.
that matters to me as much as all of this. And so, yeah, I'm not making as much as I was in my corporate job, but I'm making a good living and I'm happy with that.
Yeah. You know what? I think you really you've hit the nail on the head in terms of kind of how to describe that. And I do ask a lot of women about, are you making more now than you were in corporate or in your professional career? And a lot of the times they're not, but they're much happier. And something that
Mhm.
happened to me when I was quite young. It is before I even qualified, because obviously studying law, it takes a long time. And then
Yeah.
you qualify, and my mom passed away really suddenly at the age of 52. And
I'm sorry.
I just remember this feeling of like, of what's the point, right? Like, so, in her life you have kids and then you just pass away, but it brought that perspective to say, what's the point? Like, every single day we have, shouldn't we be living our life in that day? Because we don't know what our life's going
Yeah.
to be, but also how our life's going to kind of turn out. And it might be tomorrow that I can't do the things that I can do today. So why not
Right.
live my life today? And that was a huge, had a huge impact on my mindset and how I thought about things. And I think that that's
Mhm.
why I could, at the age of whatever it was, 29, decide to leave the safety and security of a really big prestigious firm where people will work their whole careers to get into that position.
Right.
I felt my questions weren't about, how much money can I make, how safe and comfortable can I be, even though those things are really important to me. I love the freedom that money provides. I love being
Yes.
able to be in control and be able to afford the things I like. And I love money. And I think money is great if you're going to be using it in the right way. But for
Mhm.
me, the sacrifice of looking at the directors at the time in the firm, and really knowing, like, that's not where I want to be. That's not the life I want to be living on a daily basis. And is
Mhm.
the money worth it? And the assessment at the time was no.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of how I've gauged that thought. And while I was working in corporate London, even when I was working, I was like, these guys are paying me a lot of money, and I don't feel that there's meaning or purpose in what I'm doing. And is the
Mhm.
money then worth it? And I think people get stuck on that, in that trap, because it takes a
Mhm.
lot of money to make that money, right? You have to
Yep.
be living in central London, which is expensive. You have to be commuting every day. You have to be
Mhm.
buying the clothes. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it
Yeah.
takes money. And it took a lot of money in having to, like, I was flying somewhere else in Europe every weekend because London can get very depressing and grey for like a South African. So I was spending a lot of money to make money, and I thought, but my day-to-day life isn't where I want to
Mhm.
be. And I think that's what's prompted the move to Spain, to say, like, I want my life to look this way. And it's really cool to
Mhm.
see you say, actually, it's not about the money. I feel the sense of purpose. I feel, you can see it in your face when you talk about kind of what you do. It's like, I feel that I'm really genuinely doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And so the money kind of just does, it's always important, but it just becomes not the main thing, not
Yeah.
the main
Not the main
character.
driver. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. I think we place a lot of value on money because I think society kind of shows us that as a model. And like you said, like money is great. It's a tool. It can create freedom. It can do all those things. Like there's lots you can do with it, right? But I think the trap becomes when we are always reaching for the next thing out of comparison or out of some it's like that transparent dangling carrot, right? Like when we're or the hungry
yeah,
ghost thing when we're always chasing that next thing because we're looking
yeah,
for what we think it's going to give us that next level of fulfillment. And so our lifestyle grows along with our paycheck so that we're always in the same place, you know, because we're
yeah,
always chasing that next level, next level, next level. And when you find something that's really meaningful, that really satisfies you, like inside, then you don't find that you're less ambitious per se, but like you don't have that same hungry ghost mentality where you're just trying to like be chase that next level, you know, like get that next
yeah,
thing because you know that it's never out there. It's like it's here right now in this moment.
yes,
Like you were saying,
yes,
like you never know what if you have tomorrow or the next day and you can spend your life on that treadmill or you can step off and slow down and be like, where am I right now? What do I really value? And how do I create more of that without missing like
yeah,
everything that's here right now?
yeah. And is that something that you offer sort of to your clients when you're coaching them, is to give them that space to say, let me think through this? Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
women, especially when you've been in a professional environment, you've worked very hard to get there. You spent maybe dedicated years and years and years, by the time you have kids, potentially, it's
Yeah.
15 years sometimes. And it's hard when you
Hmm.
have a kid and you realize, oh, this isn't conducive. It's really difficult. Is that
Hmm.
something that you help them through because they don't particularly know where they want to go?
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
part of the problem.
Yeah, I definitely do help my clients through that. I think one of the biggest things that often holds people back in these big life changes is like this sunk cost fallacy, right? Well, I've
Mm,
invested so much time and energy and like whatever, and all this effort being this person, achieving this thing, afraid that if you step away, you like give it up or it was all for naught. But I was like, no,
yeah,
those things served you at that period of time in your life, you know? That was
yeah,
part of your journey. And letting it go because it's no longer aligned doesn't mean that it was wrong or a mistake. It just means that it's not a right fit anymore. But if you keep wasting
mm,
time on something that's no longer fitting you, then you're just like wasting more of, like you said, that like those precious present moments and like where you're going next, holding on to something that doesn't
mm,
fit anymore. So yeah, it's a little bit of is learning how to surrender these things that we grip really tight to because we always have these ideas or expectations of how we think things need to be and
mm.
learning to like just kind of let that go a little bit um and allowing things to unfold a little bit more naturally instead of holding on to things that don't feel right because we think we need to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So, in this talk, you've mentioned learning to let go. You've mentioned learning to surrender. I feel like there's a theme. I'm a bit of a control freak, and I think a lot of people, a lot of women, feel the need to be in control, and
Yeah.
especially women who are, you know, people who are perfectionists or
Yeah.
have performed, right? Like we're used to
Yeah.
performing and we're used to
Yeah.
achieving and we're used to obtaining that success. And that
Yeah.
comes with controlling the environment and making sure that we're making the right decisions every day. And
Yeah.
I think that the letting go piece and surrendering and letting and finding acceptance in the way that things are without wanting to change them, that
Hmm.
can be really difficult.
Absolutely. It's the lesson that I keep telling myself I am master this is the life lesson that I am mastering in this lifetime. I'm convinced, you know, this continuous process of learning to like let go, um, and surrender and not need control. And it's all rooted honestly in safety. right? We think that
Yeah.
we need to control because we think it's going to be the thing that makes us feel safe. So
Yeah.
lack of safety is the biggest thing that I see in so many of my clients, and I recognize it so deeply because it's something that I've experienced myself. And it's true that so many of us
Yeah.
women, we do think that we need to have control. We have that, like, if not me, then who? You know,
Yeah.
because we
Yeah.
don't have that trust that other people will support us, that
Yeah.
other people will be there for us the way we need, that other people will do things right. And we also have a lot of self-judgment towards it. Like, if we don't do this, are we lesser than? Are we not a good enough? Not good enough is like such a core wound for so many of us. I'm not a
Yeah.
good enough mom. If I don't do this, if I don't hold this standard, if things don't go like this, then somehow it means something about us. And I think that I help a lot of clients work through those things because it's really at the root of all of that. You know, it's at the root of the thing that keeps us driving towards that next thing, or always needing to have control, and that
Yeah.
creates so much of the stress and the tension and the pressure. We're imposing it on ourselves, and that's not to say that, you know, it wasn't also imposed on us, and we've been conditioned in these ways, um, but learning that so much of that has been like self-imposed. um,
Mm.
and when I say like that self-discovery piece, I mean a lot of it was that. It was learning like to untangle that spaghetti pile of like what is really mine and what I actually want and what someone else's voice or someone else's expectation that's been put on me.
Mm.
And what if, you know, like we're walking around with these backpacks full of all these heavy rocks of like other people's expectations or the things that we think we need to hold. But what if we just sit down for a second, sort through those piles and go like, what do I really want to carry with me, and what can I let go, or what am I carrying because I didn't realize someone else slipped it in my backpack without me noticing, you know? Um,
Yeah.
and some of that comes down to like questioning our beliefs or um, well, our unconscious patterns that might exist, you know, from our own upbringing and things like that.
Yeah. And something you mentioned earlier that was really, really interesting is to say, the things we don't even say to ourselves or admit to ourselves, or even we're not even aware of
Yeah.
of the things, some issues that might be holding us back, but
Hmm.
that we can't even
Yeah.
see. What do you think that are the things that you've seen, and for yourself as well? What do you think that professional working moms and professional women struggle with the most, but that they don't always say out loud or admit to themselves?
Mm, huh. Let's see. What do I think that they're struggling with the most? I think, I mean, there's always kind of these common themes like I've already touched on. Um, a
Mm.
lot of it is like the perfectionism are not enough, but like the ways that we don't, or like the performance, but the ways in which we don't even realize those things actually exist in our lives. We go like, oh no, I'm not
Mm.
that because I don't do this or that, but we don't realize that like certain patterns actually also indicate that. Um,
Yeah.
that we do have that. So I think it's like not being able to see. I mean, we all have blind spots. We can't really see our
Yeah.
actions clearly or really examine those drivers. That's where coaching is really helpful because it helps us really understand like what is driving the behavior, you know, or what is driving this unconscious pattern. So oftentimes like so much of what we do is actually automated and it's driven by like the unconscious mind and not the conscious parts of ourselves. Um, and so I
Mm.
think that that's maybe the biggest thing that I see for most women is not being able to recognize or downplaying the things that we do because we're like, oh well, you know, my experience wasn't bad because I didn't have that. It's always like comparing to someone
Yeah.
else. Like, well, by comparison, I'm fine. By comparison, I'm doing okay, or because
Yeah.
I'm not at the extreme, right? But it's like you don't see that you're like
Yeah.
already walking towards that place. We never think we're going to get there, but we're like already taking the steps without conscious awareness, right? So it's about bringing the unconscious to the conscious. So like
Yeah.
bringing the things that we don't see to our awareness so that we can look at those more honestly, um, and start saying, does this align with me and my truth and what I want to do or what I don't want to do, right? So,
Mm.
yeah, I think a lot of times it's the ways in which we don't realize that we are performing or um, maybe overly responsible, hyper independent, not being able to let go of that self control or more perfectionist than we think. Oh no, I'm fine because I can let
Mm.
this go. But it's like, well, what about all the other places where you can't let it go, right? So just just being able to look at ourselves more objectively is really difficult for all humans. And I think that's something
Yeah.
that I see.
And particularly for women. And what are the practical tools and maybe the mindsets or the shifts that you've seen um, for yourself that make the most difference? Or
Mm.
for other moms that you see, what are the things that you've seen that really help?
Right. So, I mean, the practical tools I think I mentioned earlier, it's more about like those micro minutes, those micro moments, the things like that we can actually practically do um, that start to snowball into bigger things. So, I would say those are the biggest shifts that I think really help people in the beginning. Um, but the other piece is really just being able to have not just the awareness, but like what do I do with this awareness now? Because I think so many high performing women, high achieving women, like we've read the self-help books, we look at all the reels online, we consume that
Yeah,
information to an overwhelming degree, because we think
yeah.
that, oh, if I know more, it's going to change. Oh, I just need that one more piece of information, and then I'll know, and then I'll have it all sorted out. I'll be on the right track. We're always looking for that magic bullet, that next thing, which is really just masking the deeper wounds that we don't feel good enough,
Mm.
confident, worthy, whatever, right? Um, or masking that we need to feel like we need to get it right, because we're actually more deeply afraid of like the judgment that we think is going to come or whatever. But no one ever judges us as harshly as we judge ourselves. And I think that
No.
we often miss that self judgment piece so much, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think what I really help women with is mostly like how to bring those unconscious things to the conscious mind. Um, but then what do I do with it? Like, what is actually for me? And really, that's about getting women in tune with themselves because we have so much outside information all the time. We spend our lives looking outward, what we can do for other people, what we need to be learning, what we need to be seeing, how to keep up, how do I get to that next level? It's always with the lens pointed outward and not enough time with the lens pointed back inward. And so I think that's like the major thing that I help women come back to time and time again. It's like, how do we point the lens back inward? What is true for you? What is it that you actually want? And helping you come to that, not just consume more information because you think it's right for you. Because the truth is, there's a lot of really great information out there, and some of it might work for you, and some of it
Mm.
might not. But we need to be able to discern. And that's, I think, the key thing that we have such a hard time with discernment because there's so much to weed through, so much overwhelm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a really good point to raise because I I also, I've been on my self-help journey and obviously we're always on the journey of improving and trying
Mm-hmm.
to know more. And I actually the way that this podcast started is me thinking, surely there's someone out there who has it figured out. Like surely there's some woman out there that knows how to be an amazing present mom and also just be an incredible kick-ass professional. Maybe there's
Mm-hmm.
someone out there who doesn't doubt herself and feel overwhelmed and feel disconnected and
Right.
the more people I speak to, the more women I speak to, and also some women who have achieved incredible things
Mm-hmm.
since becoming a mom and kind of blowing it all up and starting again. um
Hmm.
it's that no one really has anything figured out, and
No.
you know we're
It's
just
a
we're
very
just all
common
trying
belief.
to, yeah, we're just
We
trying
always
to
think
figure it
someone's
out.
got it figured out. Someone must. And that's the thing that always keeps
Exactly.
us
So
searching outward, right?
precisely, and so I think what's nice about this is actually learning all the ways in which we are similar,
Hmm.
um but also just finding those elements and those nuggets in everybody's story that can help us to live a better life and help us to be a better mom and help us to be a better professional. And so I think that there's a lot in stories and seeing how other people are doing things. And what would you say to a client who came to you and they just say they just feel stuck, they feel trapped? I think that's the biggest thing that we see. They feel stuck between
Hmm.
their own professional requirements, their ambition, financial pressures, having to parent, and then also trying to find those those bits of meaning in your own life. Especially when
Hmm.
they're struggling with identity. Where would you start? What would you say to them?
Yeah. So I think where I would probably start with that is first helping them recognize that we are never really stuck. We're just sort of paralyzed with fear. It's the fear of like making the wrong decision, right? And the
Yeah,
fallout of that. So it's not really stuck, right? We feel stuck, but it's that lack of momentum and it's that analysis paralysis. It's like us being
mm,
stuck in that stage of if I don't know the next right move to make, then I won't make any move.
mm,
Um, and ironically, like the solution to that is actually to just make one small move. Because when we don't know what move to make or what the right move is, then the truth is that we need more information. But we don't need more information by going out there and looking for more information. That's just going to overwhelm us and keep us stuck in analysis paralysis. We need more information by doing something different. We need to do. And so when we're stuck, we need to take one small step to do something different and then take that information, that feedback, and apply it, and see how that changes things. And that's where things start to shift, right? Because oftentimes it's just like that the hill that we need, the hump that we need to get over is that first step. That's always the
yeah,
scariest thing, right? Um, and so we just need to push ourselves. What is one thing
yeah,
I can do differently right now? And then it does, and also give ourselves permission for it to not have to be the right thing, to not have to get it right. um, I mean, just
yeah,
do something to help you get more information and let it
yeah,
be imperfect just this once. And I think that the biggest, going back to what we were talking about earlier about those incremental steps, I think one of the biggest ways that that really helped me is it helped me through that perfectionism thing, right? By doing these little things, it helped me experiment, you know, with like what was working and what wasn't. But it also helped me build confidence because every time something
yeah,
did work, it was like proof to myself, like, oh, I can make this shift. And look, that worked for me. And now, conversely, sometimes things don't work, but then that gives you that opportunity to really give yourself compassion and grace and to face the thing that you feared, like, oh, that didn't work, or oh, that didn't, or I felt that judgment, or whatever it was, to face
mm,
that thing that you feared and learn to sit with the discomfort. Because that's another thing that we really all struggle with, the ability to really sit with discomfort. Um, in order, like just long enough to actually feel that and then make a different choice. But I think we try and hide from that. We avoid it a lot of the time, because we don't feel like we can handle it. We don't feel capable. And so by sitting with that discomfort of doing the wrong thing or failing, experimenting, and things not working out, then you also start to like build this level of resilience where you're like, oh, I am capable. I'm capable of handling
mm,
whatever life throws at me or whatever happens. And you start to build that
mm,
confidence in yourself, because you're getting more information on like what things are right for you, what choices produce good results, your ability to handle hard things, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, Brene Brown said something interesting about, our aversion to feeling that we don't know what we're doing and that we're not
Yeah.
good, we're not doing something well enough. And actually
Yeah.
that's what's preventing us from carrying on. And really, like, the space between me wanting to start a podcast and actually filming episodes and putting episodes online are years. Because I just there were so many things standing in the way in terms of like
Hmm.
how I thought I would be perceived. And who was I? I'm not a podcast host. I'm just like a
Imposter
nerd who studied
syndrome.
law. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
all these things. It's like, why would people want to talk to me? What are my colleagues going to think? Will I ever be able to work again? Would I ever be
Right.
able to support my family? And there's all these things that you kind of you pressures that you put on yourself. And but what happens is, as you go along and every step that you take kind of unlocks another step along your journey. But you
Hmm.
have to be brave enough to start taking those little steps. And they might be go outside for some fresh air every 5 minutes, or for 5 minutes in a day, or those tiny things that are going to put your mind at least in a different
Yeah.
kind of place.
They sound
Absolutely,
painfully
I
simple, right? You think like, oh, this can't possibly make a
yeah,
difference, right? Like, oh, well, how is this going to help me? How is 5 minutes possibly going to help me?
yeah,
But it's not about the 5 minutes. It's about the commitment to like that small thing for yourself and then having that compound,
hmm
right? Having like, oh, I did it. That now I feel successful. Now I can get that next thing, right? So it's like it's about the
yeah.
compound effect of like building that confidence in yourself, right?
And
Um,
proving to yourself, right? Like
yeah,
you're proving those elements to yourself that you
yeah,
can, and it's getting over those initial discomforts. That's
yeah.
that's really pivotal.
You were
Uh,
talking
what
about
what
like
is
the fears and the anxieties also of starting those things or doing those things or making the wrong
Yeah.
choice. But I just wanted to bring it back to something that I find really, really helpful in those moments, and it's about presence. Because I think we always create all these like fears and we project all these things out into the future. Usually they're based on something that happened in the past or something that we um, expect to happen in the future, or fear might happen in the future based on, a painful experience in the past. And so when we come back to present, we normally find the thing that we're actually worried about doesn't really exist right here, right now. And sometimes when we
Yeah,
can do that and come back to that centered place, it can help us take that one small step.
yeah, incredible.
Hmm.
Nikki, so one more question.
Yeah, yeah,
What does time freedom mean to you?
yeah. So, I mean, for me, I think time freedom really means it really means the choice, right? Like, I think time freedom all comes down to the choice for me to invest my time in the things that, that make my life feel good and meaningful, right? And having that choice. And so I never take that for granted, I make those choices. Like freedom is literally one of my values. So like I always come back to that as like one of my north stars when I'm making any decision about my life. It's like, does this align with my value of
Yeah,
freedom? Does this help me move closer to that goal? Is it aligned with that goal? Right. So um, that freedom of choice and the
yeah,
freedom from like fear in that present moment, like can I work through whatever's happening internally that's going to keep me stuck or keep me from moving forward. And so, time freedom is also just about moving through whatever blocks are existing to getting that freedom, so that you have that choice.
amazing. Thank
Yeah,
you. Thank you for
thanks.
coming today. Thank you for chatting with me. I've really appreciated this talk.
Yeah, thanks for having me.